In the next 20 years, 73 million baby boomers will pass on their $84 trillion in assets in what's known as the Great Wealth Transfer. Today, I'll share what's going to happen and how you can best prepare for it. But first, we need to understand how baby boomers even accumulated so much money. In 2023, boomers controlled more than $78 trillion in assets, which is more than 50% of the wealth in the United States. On the other hand, millennials hold 8.5%. While it's pretty normal for older generations to be wealthier than younger ones, a 2019 study found that millennials had far less wealth than boomers did at the same age. When boomers were in their early 30s, they held over 20% of the nation's wealth, compared to just 3.5% for millennials at the same age. But how did baby boomers accumulate so much money at such a young age? Did they just work really hard, or was there something else? In Outlier, author Malcolm Gladwell argues people don't just become successful because they worked hard or were very smart. Instead, he says there's this one other thing that makes all the difference. For example, Gladwell believes Bill Gates wouldn't have founded Microsoft if he wasn't born in 1955 to a wealthy family who could afford to send him to a private school that had one of the newest and fastest computers. By the time Bill was 20 years old, he already had thousands of hours of programming experience under his belt thanks to the private school, and he was the perfect age. Old enough to start a business, but young and unattached enough to have the time to sink into something new and uncertain. If he was born a few years later or earlier, things could have been very different. And looking back, it's clear that baby boomers lived through a pivotal time for wealth creation, a catalyst that laid the foundation for how the wealth gap was about to change forever. It signaled two essential elements. First, there's real estate to think about. Prior to the 1980s, at its core, housing was just a way to not die during cold winters and maybe having a yard for playing with your dog. The early housing market was only seen as a place to live, not as an investment. House prices never rose fast enough to outpace wage growth or stock market returns. Now, no one expected to lose money on a house, but people saw it as a way to store money rather than to multiply it. But over time, that view began to shift. The 1980s saw the rise of real estate as an investment as mortgage rates began to drop and it became cheaper to access loans to buy homes. And during this time, baby boomers were in their 20s and 40s, which is the prime time to buy a house. According to Rice University, the sweet spot to be able to afford a home is a 3-to-1 ratio of home price to annual income. In the 1980s, the median home price cost $64,600, and the median household income was around $21,020, the perfect ratio. The problem is that 3-to-1 ratio is no longer a reality. Today, the median house price costs around $417,000, while the median household income is lagging behind at around $74,000, resulting in a 5.5-to-1 ratio. This shift towards real estate investing in the 1980s was the pivot that disconnected housing prices and wages. As a result, since 1983, the average price of a US home increased by more than 500%, meaning baby boomers who purchased a house during that time have reaped substantial gains that continue to pay off to this day. Next, there's the stock market to think about. Prior to the 1970s, the stock market was like a sketchy carnival that few had access to or trusted to not be a scam. But in 1976, John Bogle created the very first index fund, a type of investment that made it much easier and cheaper for everyday people to invest. Similarly, the computer, the internet, and 401k plans became more mainstream. You now no longer needed a Harvard finance degree, a Bloomberg terminal, or be able to read 10 newspapers daily just to invest. And again, during this time, baby boomers were in their 20s to 40s, hitting the higher end of their earning potential, leading to two key moments in stock market history. First, in the 1980s, assets in mutual funds jumped from $241 billion to $1.5 trillion. Second, from 1980 to 1999, the stock market grew about 18% per year. In comparison, the average return of the S&P 500 between 2003 and 2020 is 10.2%. While 10% is still a fantastic return, the extra 8% difference each year for nearly 20 years could mean the difference between accumulating over $1 million and $340,000. But to be clear, I'm not saying baby boomers never worked hard or had to go through tough economic times, because they definitely did. But all I'm saying is timing and luck helped a lot. But you might ask, why does this even matter? Baby boomers are gonna pass all their wealth to their children anyway, making millennials the new wealthiest generation and reshaping the wealth landscape. Right? Kind of. First, the millennials who are gonna benefit the most from this wealth transfer are already in a good position to begin with. The problem is, so much of the wealth in the US is concentrated in the top 1% that most of us won't see much of anything. Most baby boomers are just gonna leave behind a few $1,000s, maybe a house, or maybe not much at all. But some baby boomers will leave their heirs millions and billions of dollars in various assets. According to the New York Times, ultra-high net worth households, people with $5 to $20 million in net worth, only make up about 1.5% of the population, but will make up 42% of the money that gets passed down. On the other hand, the bottom 50% of households will only make up 8% of this money. That's if they don't run out of money first. The problem is, most baby boomers have no retirement savings and are becoming homeless at a rate not seen since the Great Depression. The cost of living is rising, Social Security is running out, and healthcare costs are increasing. And fortunately, people are living longer. But that means that most regular baby boomers will end up spending most of their money on their own survival and may not have anything left to give. But surely this massive wealth gap should be evened out with taxes, right? The problem is, the wealthy are very well versed in all these tax loopholes. There's stepped up bases, tax-free cash transfers, trust funds, and more. But even without these tax loopholes, the US tax code allows individuals to give up to $12 million to their heirs without any federal estate tax. Married couples can give up to $26 million tax-free, meaning that by 2045, already wealthy millennials could inherit more than $30 trillion and only have to pay about $4.2 trillion in taxes. Although $4.2 trillion seems like a lot of money, that's only a 14% federal tax rate, and I am positive that you currently pay a higher tax rate than that. But what makes this even more frustrating is that in 2001, the amount individuals could give to their heirs tax-free was $675,000, which is already a good chunk of money. But thanks to the lobbying from the wealthy, this tax-free threshold increased 19 times to the $12 million that I just talked about in only about 20 years. And speaking of such a large wealth gap, I've come to realize that when you grow up without money, you tend to build up a lot of financial baggage and trauma that negatively impacts you later in life. And what I think is really helpful is therapy, which can give you the strategies to work through this. That's why I'm excited to talk about today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy more affordable and accessible. Finding a therapist can be tough, especially when you're limited to the options in your area. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online, it's remote. And by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched, just check out the link below. It's betterhelp.com/Vincent Chan, and clicking that link supports the channel, but more importantly, gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp. And because finding a therapist is a little like dating, if you don't really fit with that therapist, you can easily switch to a new therapist at no additional cost, without stressing about insurance or who's in your network. If you ever went through or are going through a hard time, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/Vincent Chan, and thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. So if you're watching right now and you want to get in a better financial place because Lord knows you're not inheriting $12 million tax-free, here are some steps you can take to get there. First, a lot of it has to do with spending and affordability. According to a recent report, 73% of millennials and 66% of Gen Z are now living paycheck to paycheck. And one of the biggest issues is with housing. So if you're renting a house or apartment, one of the most effective rules to follow is the 50-30-20 rule, meaning 50% of your take-home pay goes towards your needs like housing, food, and utility, 30% for your wants, your vacations, entertainments, and Mr. Magic Lamps, and 20% to your savings. This rule was initially recommended so that after you paid all your essentials, you still had money left over for things like vacations, entertainments, and savings. That means if you make the median income of around $70,000 a year, you can afford up to $2,916 in rent per month. But remember, the needs categories is split with other necessities like food, internet, and utilities, meaning the greater your other essential expenses, the less you can spend on your rent. If you are gonna go over this 50% rule, know that you'll have to tweak your other expense categories. But when it comes to buying a house or paying for your mortgage payments, you wanna follow the 28-36 rule, which means that your monthly mortgage payment should not be more than 28% of your monthly gross income, including taxes, insurance, and PMI. And your monthly mortgage payments plus all your debts should be less than 36% of your monthly gross income. But the problem with the housing market right now is there's not enough supply, but I do kind of think that this should improve in the next 2 decades. Because as baby boomers pass down their houses, many millennials might sell them, since 75% of houses in the US were built before 1999, and the younger generation, might not want to live in their childhood home or live in a house that is really old. Next, if you're able to lower your overall spending, you definitely need to take some of those savings to build out your emergency fund. Basically, it's when you save about 5 to 6 months of your monthly expenses for financial emergencies. When I was building mine, I built this savings goal tracker to help me save money faster. I just put in how much I want to save, and then I can track my progress and visually see where I'm at. And for a limited time, I'm giving away my ultimate savings goal tracker for free with the link below. Once you're done filling up your emergency fund, you should start investing with a very specific type of account to optimize your taxes. Although you and future generations likely won't experience the kind of stock market gains that baby boomers did, you'll still be much better off investing your money than not. First, you want to contribute money to this thing called a Roth IRA account, where the contributions are made with post-tax money, meaning you're first going to pay taxes on your income before you can add that money to this account. The advantage of a Roth IRA is that you don't have to pay taxes on any growth in this account, and you can withdraw your contributions at any time. Contributing $250 a month into your Roth IRA account compounded over 40 years at the average stock market return will result in a balance of $94,000. If you can increase that contribution to $400 a month, your end balance will be over $1.44 million. And if you're able to max out your contribution, you're looking at just shy of $2 million within 40 years. And the best part is, you can withdraw all that money tax-free. Next, you need to constantly look for ways to increase your income. And there are 2 ways to do this. First, side hustles are a great opportunity to make extra money. It's actually what jump-started my journey into entrepreneurship. And all it really requires is putting aside a couple of hours every few days. There's dog sitting, flipping phones online, or selling ebooks. Second is to frequently job hop. A 2023 study found that employees who stayed at their current job only received a 5.3% pay increase. However, employees who job hopped received on average a 9% salary increase. But before you do that, what if I told you that something really weird is happening to the job market right now? Politicians keep saying that the economy is doing great, but then why does it feel nearly impossible to get a job right now? Click here to learn what's really happening and how you can stop it from happening to you.